What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome back for some more Fire Emblem Heroes, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the Princess of Bern Banner, which features Guinivere, Melady, Dieck, and Merlinus. So I'm going to be giving you guys analysis of these units and also a lot of builds which you could run on them, and Melady does come with Wyvern Flight, which is a new skill, so I'm also going to be going over that and who are the best users of that skill. At the end, I'm also going to be going over which unit you should spark for if you are deciding to do 40 summons on this banner. So with that said, I hope you guys do enjoy and let us begin. Guinivere is an infantry blue mage, and she comes with a preferred weapon Aureola, which has got effective damage against mages, which makes her a very strong mage killer. And I also want to compare the stats which I expected and speculated in my first impression to see how close I was. So I did get her speed right, but I was definitely like a few points off from her attack and resistance. I did think that she would have more attack than this, mainly because she's got an effective weapon. But with this kind of stat spread, Guinivere is basically a counter pick unit against mages because the effective damage is really amazing. She has got incredible amount of resistance out of the space kit, so mages are really not going to be doing much damage to her, and even green mages have trouble killing her. Aureola's other effect gives her +5 attack, speed, and resistance if she's within 2 spaces of an ally or if she initiates combat. And it also disables the adaptive damage from dragons, and it also has a better Breath of Life effect built into it. This Breath of Life effect is active in both phases, and it can heal up herself and her allies, which is really amazing for longevity. But this also means that she is mainly going to be taking care of mages because she cannot really run Desperation or Vantage to deal with some of the physical units because it will have anti-synergy with Aureola. But as long as the opponent has got low resistance, even if they're physical, Guinivere can definitely do a decent amount of damage. Guinivere does have rather low HP stats, so she does appreciate the fact that she can heal up HP with the help of Aureola, so that definitely helps a lot. And the healing effect also heals up the ally, so it's really nice if you're using some tanky units with her. But if you're using some offensive units who want to be in the range of Desperation and Vantage and stuff like that, then they will not appreciate the healing, so you have to keep that in mind. She does have a speed super boon, and that can definitely help her not get doubled by a lot of the fast mages and double them herself, which can really help in a lot of scenarios. Overall, Guinivere is the star of this banner, which does make sense because of the novelty factor from Aureola, and the effective damage against mages is really nice for stuff like counter picking in Arena Assault or Ether Raids, and in general dealing with mage foes is pretty easy with Guinivere. So she isn't really any kind of broken unit, but she definitely has her own niche of being a counter pick unit and a mage slayer. For her builds, you can definitely go with a budget build, just slapping Speed Rest Solo Sacred Steel, and she just needs to be within 2 spaces of an ally. So instead of having any kind of adjacent ally, you could just keep her 1 space away, and all of the effects are still going to be active on Aureola. Attack Rest Push is already really good on her because she can offset the recall damage with the healing of Aureola. And that's why you could also run Fury, because Fury does give you extra speed, so that can help you. And again, the recall damage is offset by the healing of Aureola. You could also go with the speed route by firing off a Brave Lysithea for attack speed push 4 and lot speed resistance if you want to make her fast. As I said, unfortunately she cannot really use stuff like Desperation because it has anti-synergy with Aureola, so she has to run a lull skill, and this can also help her be incredibly fast because she's going to be hitting upwards of 50 speed. She can also be used with Mystic Boost, so double healing is really nice because she's going to be having really nice longevity. She does have low HP, so she's going to get one-shot pretty easily by any kind of physical unit as it is. But what this allows you to do is have really nice self-sustain with Mystic Boost and Aureola. And we are not going to be using a push skill because we don't want any kind of recall damage, so Attack Rest Solo does work on her slot A. She is going to be a pretty nice counter pick unit in Ether Raids against mage heavy teams, and a lot of times the physical units, if they are someone like Seliph or Eliwood, then Guinivere can still do a decent amount of damage to them, especially after something like Bolt Tower goes off, and then she could proceed to take care of the other mages. So basically use her only as a counter pick unit against those kinds of teams, and you could run a healing special like Soul for longevity, and if you want to invest more into her, then you could definitely give her distant defense, special spiral, and pulse smoke. So this allows her to be extremely bulky, and she's going to be able to retaliate back with icebergs, which is going to be doing so much damage, and she does have the self-sustain from Aureola, so that is really good. And even someone like Thracier cannot really outspeed this kind of Guinivere, and despite being green, Thracier is really not going to be able to do much a lot of times. You could also run Null Counter Disrupt on her slot B, and she already has pretty nice resistance to take care of mages, so why not also take care of the annoying Dazzling Staff units, and this can allow her to be a really nice check to those kinds of annoying mages and also staff units. You could also use her in Aether Raid's defense in the hands of AI. She is not gonna be a very strong nuke per se, but she's really nice in the Anima season because Bronya is pretty much the most common Astra tank which a lot of free-to-play players use. So there she can be a Bronya check essentially, and even if Bronya is not on the opposing team, Guinivere's defense is really lacking and the AI can be really stupid, so an impact skill can definitely help you fail-proof that because it is going to be giving her more defense, so she can at least survive hopefully one hit from a lot of units. The sturdy impact can definitely help you with that, but if you want to have more damage output, then mirror impact also works. Dieck is an Axe Infantry unit, and honestly, when the trailer came out, I expected him to have a bit more speed because he has got Null follow-up. So I expected like 39 speed, but he ends up with 35, which is not the highest, but he does have the auto follow-up. I did expect him to have really high attack, so he does end up having that, and I was kind of close with defense as well. So Dieck is a pretty nice Axe Infantry unit because of Tiger Roar Axe. It's a preferred weapon giving him -1 special cooldown, and if he initiates combat or if he's within 2 spaces of an ally, then he gets +5 to all of his stats during the combat, and if the foe is also at 100% HP, then he can make a guaranteed follow-up attack. So there are 2 conditions to be met if you want to have the guaranteed follow-up attack. You need to meet the primary condition, and you also want to make sure that the foe is at full health. So this can be inconsistent at times, but a lot of times, Dieck is going to be pretty powerful to just one-round KO a lot of foes, and the -1 special cooldown is going to be helping him so much, as you will see later on in the builds. Dieck can be a pretty versatile unit with this stat spread. He can function in player phase, in enemy phase, or in both phases, as you'll see in the builds. So his massive attack stat is definitely really nice for getting one-shots and one-round KOs, and his speed is at an awkward point. It's not really too high, it's not really too low, but it can definitely be stacked upon if you want to invest heavily into him, and that can open up more options. And he does have pretty decent bulk actually. He does get extra stats from Tiger Roar Axe, so that does help him with his offenses and bulk overall. And it's really easy to get those stats during the combat, so he's not really going to be having much trouble triggering that primary condition. He does have Super Boon and Attack, which can definitely make him extremely powerful, but Speed Boon is also something you could consider if you want to go that route and invest heavily into him. Resistance Boon can help with some kind of distant counter build, but I mostly prefer attack or speed boons. For a budget build, you could just run attack defense solo on him. It does work in both phases, so that can definitely help you a lot, and with close defense and null follow-up, he can definitely be a pretty fantastic unit to be used in Arena Assault. He can definitely take on a lot of annoying units with that close defense 4, ignoring any kind of buffs that they have. So close defense can definitely help you against those kinds of buffed foes, and you could also run Heavy Blade along with Ignis. So Ignis becomes a 3-turn special with his axe, and then you could trigger it in one combat with Heavy Blade, so that can really help with the damage output. And you could also run a budget Gale Force build. Because of the -1 special cooldown, he does have 4-turn Gale Force, so you can even trigger this against a range unit or when he's in the Desperation range. For more investment, you could run Heavy Blade 4 and slot it. That can give you true damage, and that can definitely help you with the Gale Forcing. And if the foe is not at full HP, then Swiss Sparrow's extra speed and the extra speed from his weapon can definitely help him double. He can definitely run a distant counter build because despite not having that much high visible resistance, he can get more from his weapon, and you could run something like Speed Rest Solo, which could definitely help him with that. So you can definitely run this build, and you can also run Sturdy Impact if you just want to focus on the player phase. Sturdy Impact is really nice for increasing his defense, which can help him with not taking any kind of damage because he's going to have upwards of like 50 defense, which is really nice. And of course, Gale Force is a really good option with Heavy Blade. And Sturdy Impact can also be used with a special like Bonfire or Ignis. Ignis can be used with Time Pulse, so Ignis becomes a 2-turn special at the start of every turn, and that is very powerful. He could trigger that even in the Desperation range. And if you want to go the speed route, if you don't really like the condition of Tiger Roar Axe, the fact that the foe has to be at full HP, then you could definitely go and invest into his speed with going with plus speed IV and going with attack speed push 4. And on high investments, I would definitely recommend going for a speed because it can open up options like close call and the damage reduction skills. So he will have more options to choose from at high investment with plus speed IV. Melody is a lance flyer, and I did expect her to have like insanely high defense and really low resistance, which she ends up having. I was definitely pretty close with her offenses as well. So she's a lance flyer who doesn't have a preferred weapon, and that class type is so hard to compete in because we have got so many units in that class type. But Melody does have pretty high attack stat and defense. Sadly, her speed is in a really awkward position where she can barely trigger the Wyvern Flight speed check, but she's really not going to be able to double too much at low investment, so that pretty much leaves her to be an enemy phase unit using quick riposte and stuff like that. And being an enemy phase unit doesn't really have best synergy with her weapon Instant Lance, which is a player phase weapon, and in player phase it's not going to be easy for her to double with that kind of speed stat, unfortunately, in 2020. So I wish Melody had some kind of preferred weapon, because if you have played Binding Blade, then you know how much of an MVP she is in that game. But with this kind of stat spread, she can definitely take advantage of Wyvern Flight, and she does need to meet the speed check. And after she meets the speed check, then it's really good because she does have pretty high defense for getting the advantage out of it. And she also has a super boon in defense, which is going to be helping a lot. Sadly, Wyvern Flight checks for the visible stats, so attack defense solo is not the appropriate skill for this. You need to have extra visible defense. Something like Fortress Defense Res would have been perfect for her. Her weapon Instant Lance is basically having a mini sturdy impact built into it, so she's not really going to be getting doubled when she niche hits in the player phase. Melody has got the highest defense out of any kind of flying unit as of right now, I believe, so she can definitely take advantage of Wyvern Flight as long as she can meet the speed check. Wyvern Flight is a pretty interesting skill, which is a counterpart to Pegasus Flight. So Wyvern Flight uses visible stats. You need to have two stats to make this skill work: speed and defense. Speed is required to enter the speed check and then activate the skill, and then defense is going to be giving you the attack and defense debuff, and the more defense you have, the better it is. So basically, Wyvern Flight has got the speed check, which is going to be the initial check, and for example, if Melody has got 33 speed, then she can have the speed check activated against any kind of foe with 42 or less speed. So it does have a more generous speed check compared to Pegasus Flight, which does make sense because Wyvern units are usually slow. So you have to win the speed check first, and after you win the speed check, you will then activate the other condition of the weapon, which can give you attack and defense debuff on the foe during the combat, depending on 50% of the difference between defense stat of the unit and the foe. So this is again checking the visible stats, so higher the defense, the better it is. Wyvern Flight can be tougher to take advantage of because on average more units have higher defense than they have higher resistance. So in that case, Pegasus Flight has got better reward, but not a lot of units can use Pegasus Flight. Compared to that, there are a lot of units which can actually utilize Wyvern Flight and make use of this, but having higher defense than a lot of these really new units who have insane defense is going to be harder, and you basically need to have 14 more defense than the enemy in order to get the full advantage and the full -7 debuff on attack and defense with Wyvern Flight. So that is the new skill. It's definitely pretty interesting because flyers don't have a lot of really good slot B options. Wyvern Flight is really good on highly invested units who already have merges and dragon flowers, and summoner support also helps because, as I said, this does check your visible speed and visible defense stat, so any kind of help is going to be really nice, and I wouldn't really recommend this on low merge units. Instead, go for the high investment units. They make really good use of this skill. So let's go for some of the good units who can make use of Wyvern Flight. Minerva is a really popular unit which a lot of people build, and she doesn't really have set slot B skill other than Desperation, so Wyvern Flight could definitely be used with that, and visible buffs is gonna be pretty nice with this, so attack defense oath does work there, and she does get more stats from Dragoon Shield, so that works. Walter, who got a new weapon refine recently, does have Fury built into his weapon, so that means higher visible stats, so you could go with that Fury and attack speed rain from Brave Claude and basically have Wyvern Flight. Altena has got pretty high defense, so she can definitely make use of this, and she does have a super boon in speed, so if you want to build a Wyvern Flight Altena, then this is definitely the IV that you want to use. So skills which give you visible stats like Fury Fortress Defense are really nice with this skill. Heat and Cormac could also make use of this. Trevant and Har do have super boons on their speed, so they can use that and meet the speed check of Wyvern Flight. Spring Narcian was actually a 4-star focus unit, so if you do have him at +10 merch, then he's also a pretty nice user of this. And then we move on to some 5-star logged units. So original Lagarn can make pretty good use of this, and she could get a weapon refine, so this can definitely help her. And in my opinion, Jill is basically the best user of Wyvern Flight. Now, there are units who have higher defense than her, sure, but Jill is pretty insane, and it should be illegal with how hard she can hit with the help of this skill, and how there's zero opportunity cost for her running this skill in her slot B. For other units, you know, you could have run Quick Riposte, you could have used IOT Shield Sacred Seal and run Quick Riposte in slot B, you could have run Guard Bearing, Desperation or other stuff, but for Jill there's absolutely no opportunity cost because her weapon has got Desperation built into it, she also gets extra attack and speed, and it has got -1 special cooldown. So Jill is an insane unit with Wyvern Flight, and I would definitely like to crown her as the best user of Wyvern Flight. She's a 5-star logged unit, of course, but man, this is definitely her best lobby skill, and you know, there's absolutely no doubt about that. As for the builds of Melody, you can go with a budget mixed phase build with having Quick Riposte Sacred Seal. Speed Smoke and her slot C can help her meet the speed check for Wyvern Flight, and you can also use stuff like Fury and Fortress Defense on budget to increase her visible defense, because as I said, attack defense solo doesn't have the best synergy with Wyvern Flight because it doesn't really increase your visible defense. If you want to invest a bit more into her, then she could definitely be used with a plus speed IV and Fury, so this allows her to have a better player phase, and you can definitely use stuff like Fury 4 and attack speed Rain. And Flowing Lance is actually pretty amazing with Wyvern Flight because this pretty much allows you to have a lot of attack and defense debuff with stacking Flowing Lance debuffs, Wyvern Flight debuffs, and attack defense Rain. Flowing Lance does have the lull attack defense essentially with the solo condition, so the enemies' visible buffs to their defense are ignored, which is really good. You could also use her with Spirited Spear from Gate Tree, and that does have pretty nice synergy with Speed Defense Oath if you're running that from Mini Marth. And if you want to invest highly into her, then you could definitely run her with a build like this with Guild Fork. Guild Fork does allow her to neutralize the debuffs to her attack and defense, 2 of her highest stats, so that does help. And you could also use a Fury 4 build, you know, with max investment. And at last, if you don't want to use Wyvern Flight, then she could also be a good recipient of Distant Foil because she doesn't have the highest resistance, but she can definitely take care of a lot of archers and dagger units with having IOT Shield Sacred Seal. Merlinus is a 4-star focus unit on this banner, and he's basically the meme of this banner because he's got 20 base attack. Yes, 20 base attack in 2020. He even has lower attack than what I speculated and calculated. I expected like 23 attack, he has even lower, and he doesn't really have as high of a speed, which I was thinking he would have. So he's not really all that min-maxed. He does have a pretty decent amount of defense and resistance and workable speed basically. And the highest stat which he has got is going to be his HP stat, which he does have the super boon in. So that is a ridiculously high HP stat, but unfortunately cavalry units cannot use stuff like Sudden Panic, but still there are definitely some skills which he could utilize, and there are some ways that the high HP can come to your rescue and definitely make him a pretty unique unit, even though he is not really going to be doing any kind of damage. So Merlinus has the lowest attack stat out of any kind of unit in the entire game as of right now, which is kind of funny. So he's basically a meme unit for this banner, but he can have his own usage if you want to invest into him. So because he's a meme, you could embrace the meme and go with the first build. Of course, this is a completely joke build. You know, you could have it as a funny build for your lead unit. But other than that, it doesn't really have anything going for it. If you actually want to use him, then you could go with a budget support build by having double distant guard and running darting blow because he does have workable speed stat. And you could also go with a passive build, basically what you would run on someone like Jafar maybe, by having Poison Strike and double Savage Blow for the splash damage. And if you want to invest heavily into him, then you could use him as a support unit with Temari Plus. And even Pulse Tide does make use of his fantastic HP stat, so that is a support skill that you could run in slot B. And you could also run him with Broadleaf Fan if you actually want him to do damage. So Broadleaf Fan is the best way of doing that because it does give you extra attack based on the debuffs that you have on the enemy. Now finally, you could also run him in Ether Raid's defense on a Cav line. So he's not really going to be hitting very hard, but he's basically going to be a stall unit. So he can basically be an annoyance at max investment because he's going to be having like 50 defense and 50 resistance while having 67 HP. And 67 HP is pretty nice because he's not going to get, struck down by Tactics Room or even Loki, I guess. So high HP is definitely really nice, and for Ether Age defense you could use Ouch Pouch with Moonbow so that he can have a pre-charged special basically, so that definitely helps you. And finally, if you want to use him for the newest game mode, Pawns of Loki, then he is definitely a pretty nice unit because of his high HP stat. So HP is really important in that game mode for scoring. So on budget and even on max investment you could definitely use Merlinus, but don't really expect him to do any kind of damage to those ridiculously high units with plus 24 or plus 28 combos. Overall, I don't think this banner is a must to summon on. You should definitely wait and see what kind of mythic unit we get at the end of the month, and we're also going to be getting book 5 next month, so it will have a new kind of unit and a new kind of banners, so that is definitely something to look forward for. But if you want to do 40 summons on this banner, then I would definitely suggest you to go with Guinivere as your free summon, because she has really fantastic niche of being a mage check basically, and that novelty is pretty nice honestly, so you could definitely use her. But if you already got her and on your 48th summon you want to go for someone, then I would still recommend to go for Guinevere for the fodder, or for Dieck if you want to have close defense 4 and null follow up at the same time. So these two units have the best fodder out of any of the units on this banner, and they actually have 2 tier 4 skills in their base kit. So Guinevere and Dieck are the units to go for fodder purpose, but if you want to use someone with your spark, then Guinevere is definitely going to be the unit. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I want to thank all of my YouTube members for their constant support, and if you enjoyed, then please be sure to leave a like and a comment, helps you tremendously. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as the attack stat of Merlinus. So that's it, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.